morning, everyone. On behalf of TPAbenchmark.com and Millennium Trust Company, I want to welcome you to our first TPA owner webinar of the new year. And we are looking forward to sharing a tremendous amount of content with you with the goal of helping you start your sales year on the right foot. We're going to launch in with some introductions, and I'm just going to pause for a moment as we have our TPA owners signing on the call. But thanks everyone for joining us, and we're looking forward to a great presentation this morning. So we'll start maybe with a little bit of background. We are again delighted to host this with Peter Welsh and David Turner from Millennium Trust. The title of our webinar today is Launching Your 2021 Sales Efforts with Insights from the Pros. We have 3 power-packed panels prepared for everyone, about 20 minutes each, and we encourage you to stay on for the entire presentation, and my associate Ricky Nitre will tell you why in a few moments. But again, thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to a great event. Terry Astrike, we have working AV, so Terry, we'll go ahead and get started. Well,
Don, it's not moving. Oh. Did you stop my share?
Oh, no. No, I didn't. We'll make sure we can. Hang on. Okay, we'll go ahead and activate that. And Terry, while you are maybe advancing to the next slides, let me just go ahead and bring Peter Welsh on from Millennium Trust Company. Peter, delighted to have you with us today, as well as David Turner. And just let me introduce Peter personally, and then I'm going to let you talk about your role, Peter. But I've had the privilege of knowing Peter for about 16 years now. Many of you TPA owners out there know Peter from his former leadership roles on the leadership team of Transamerica Retirement, running their sales organization nationally, and most recently with One America. Millennium Trust Company was fortunate enough to have Peter sign on as their new head of retirement services. We've been working with Millennium for about 3 years now, and we're so delighted to have you all with us today. And Peter, perhaps you could just introduce yourself and your new role to the group.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much. It's nice to be with everyone today. Yeah, well, I presume many of you have some familiarity in one way or another with Millennium Trust, and probably Terry Dunn. Terry occupied my chair for 15 years or more before he retired last spring. He really built the auto rollover business that we have as our calling card today, from really nothing in 2005 to now about a 70–75% market share. So that's probably how most of you, if you do know us, have interacted with us in the past. Today, I'm going to be talking about a new offering that we're launching with some record-keeping partners this spring, but also available to TPAs too, which I hope you'll find interesting, around emergency savings. But my actual role, if you knew Terry, it's the exact same. So basically, all of retirement services for Millennium Trust on the institutional side. So the auto rollover business, the search services, the terminated plans, anything having to do with those pushed out IRAs is pretty much what we run. As well as some of the expanding offerings we're going to talk about today. And then I'll turn it over to David, who's one of our regional reps. So David. David, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us. My role, very quickly, because I think we want to get on to a really great program here, is I have responsibility for our South Central region, for our business development efforts across all of our solutions. And also proud to say I report to Pete directly. And we're looking forward to this program. I think you're going to find out that we have a lot of great content and great panels. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, David and Peter. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We've have just terrific content prepared for you all this morning. Our first segment this morning, we are pleased to introduce Kelsey Mayo, who is a partner with Pointers for Will. And actually, you have a new role with ASPA, Kelsey, am I correct?
That's right. That's right. I think perhaps officially starting on the 1st, although I've already kind of started to get my feet wet. I will also be serving as the Director of Regulatory Policy for the American Retirement Association. So still with the firm, still doing my whole private practice thing, but also will be serving the ARA in that role, which I'm very, very excited about.
Wonderful. And joining Kelsey, she is going to discuss Secure Act 2.0. And specifically, we've asked Kelsey to focus in on 3 particular points of Secure Act that have particular marketing relevance to TPA owners. We've invited 3 distinguished TPAs to join Kelsey this morning. Dana Broadway, who is a partner with PB&H out in Waco, Texas. Good morning, Dana. We have Michael Gorelick from Benefit Equity out in Southern California, joining us very early. Thank you, Michael.
Good morning.
And Judy Lynch, who is Director of Sales and Marketing for Long Island Employee Benefits Group as well. So I want to thank our panelists. And Kelsey, maybe you could kind of start going through your presentation. And we're working on bringing up your slides, but perhaps you can kind of just give an overview of what you're going to talk about and launch in, and we'll catch up with you.
Sure. Do you want me to just share it for mine?
I'm not, if you can, if you're able to, that would be great. If not, we'll get it going and just go ahead and terrific. Thanks.
All right. So hopefully you all can see the slides. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me move them to the other screen so that I can see them while I'm looking at the camera. Okay. So like Don said, we're just going to launch in and talk about a couple things in Secure 2.0, just to level set, make sure we're all talking about the same thing. Right. Of course, the Secure Act was passed as part of the larger bill at the end of 2019. It feels like forever ago. Everyone was very excited about Secure, and then COVID hit and we all forgot that it happened. But immediately, after that, Secure 1.0 was a huge step in the right direction, right? We know that it increased savings, the tax credits for startup plans. It did a lot of things to help promote retirement plans. But, the work is never done. So immediately I started working, a lot of the legislators started working on additional steps, saying, okay, this was a good first step, but there's, a long way to go. So Secure 2.0 was proposed, and there's a lot in Secure 2.0. But the 3 things that we're going to talk about today, which may be very helpful for selling plans, are an additional increase in the startup tax credits that we'll talk about. There's also a new tax credit that will actually help subsidize the employer contribution for new plans. So the startup credits are all about administrative costs, giving folks tax credits for the administrative costs, but Secure 2.0 also has a proposal to incentivize employer contributions to those plans. We'll look at that. And then there's a expansion to the Savers Credit. We will talk about what the Savers Credit currently is. It's not really a huge factor in promoting plans now, but it could be if Secure 2.0 passes. So just launching in right away to what the startup tax credit change proposal is. After Secure 1.0, right, the startup tax credit is currently a tax credit equal to 50% of the startup cost for the plan, capped at $250 per non-highly compensated employee. The minimum tax credit is $500. The maximum tax credit is $5,000. And it applies for employers with up to 100 employees. It applies for the first 3 years of the plan. So the proposal doesn't change a lot about that, but it does change that 50% to 100%. So instead of the tax credit being half of the admin startup costs, it could be 100% of the admin startup costs, still within that range of $250 per non-highly compensated employee, minimum 500, maximum 5,000. That could be, as we'll see in an example on the next slide. I mean, that could really dramatically increase the number of or basically the incentive to adopt a plan. Okay, I'm getting a notice so that some of the slides aren't moving.
Okay, just keep going.
Okay.
I'm going to try and resolve that. For everybody on the call, we're going to send you slides afterwards as well. We're going to try and get this corrected on the back end, but just proceed for now, Kelsey.
Okay. So continuing on then, the other thing that Secure 2.0 would do would clarify that employers who join an existing plan do in fact qualify for startup tax credits. There's been a lot of discussion about whether under Secure 1.0, if a small employer joins a MEP, for instance, will they will that employer be permitted to take the tax credits? We've seen a lot of back and forth about whether that's the case. The report that goes along with Secure 2.0 suggests that small employers are not currently eligible, but that there would be a fix in Secure 2.0 to make them eligible. That doesn't necessarily mean that the current law that's how it'll be enforced, but just to put that out there, there would be a clarification in Secure 2.0. Okay, so it's going to be slightly less effective if you can't see the example here. But let's just take a quick example of, a plan who currently has startup costs of 12,000, hold on, let's see if I can do this. Hopefully you can see this one. At least for the example, I can always stop screen sharing again if it doesn't move. But hopefully you all can see the example. Let's just say that a brand new plan clearly qualifies for a tax credit. Has startup costs in year 1 of like 12,500, year 2, 7,500, year 3, 75, or not 7,500, $750 in years 2 and 3. So, or the admin costs, are $2,500 in year 1, $1,500 in year 2, $1,500 in year 3. So you have total costs of $5,500 over the first 3 years for this brand new plan. Well, currently under Secure 1.0, the credit is limited to 50%, up to those limits based on the number of NHCs and the caps. So under the current scheme, you're only going to get a credit of half of each of those amounts. So the total credits would be $2,750. And essentially the net cost to the company is going to be $2,750. Whereas if Secure 2.0 were passed, the limit is 100% of those admin costs within the minimum and maximum limits. And that's going to result in the same plan costing the company $0. So all of the admin costs become tax credits. And we are very careful, to never say that the plan is free. But the tax credits essentially reimburse the company for the first 3 years of admin costs.
Great. So I'm
I'll
going
pause there.
to ask the panelists to comment, but first I have a question from Charlie Steingass, who runs defined benefit plans, and he's asking, is there any chance that companies that already have a 401k but add a cash balance plan will be eligible for the tax credit, Kelsey?
That's a good question. So I don't believe that is in Secure 2.0. I think it is a great idea and something perhaps to promote, because again, the cash balance plans certainly benefit coverage in the retirement systems, certainly promote good retirement outcomes, which is certainly a policy focus. So I don't think it's in Secure 2.0 now, but I'll certainly make that suggestion because that would be fantastic.
You got the right person, Charlie, to advocate for it with Kelsey's with ASPA. But let me bring in our panel. Dana, Michael, Judy, comments on how you're kind of leveraging this particular point with advisors in Q1 2021.
So when we start looking at costs, especially the first year, and a lot of, especially working with some small employers, they get very concerned with that initial year cost. So it's been good to, number one, pull in their CPA in the discussion for a brand new plan, and then also be able to illustrate this has been huge, because they don't have the assets to really leverage the asset-based pricing. So this really gives them some relief and some encouragement to put that plan into place where they may have shy away a little bit, or have gone the SEP route instead.
Great. Kelsey, we have someone asking, Mero Capo, thanks for the question. Does an employer qualify for the tax credit if they join a PEP?
Right. So under Secure 2.0, they absolutely would. Under current guidance, I think that there's a question. I think that the intent was that they would. Whether we get guidance clarifying that point is kind of still yet to be seen, but certainly under Secure 2.0, they would.
Okay, great. Terrific. All right, let's see if we can move to the next point, and we'll bring in our other panelists as well.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if the slides are advancing for you
Working
guys.
well, thank you.
Okay,
Working
great. So this was one of the changes that I just kind of blew my mind when I started reading Secure 2.0. There's actually a credit for making employer contributions to a new plan. And I think that this could be a huge selling point for some folks. So under Secure 2.0, if it were passed, essentially what it would provide is if you have fewer than 100 participants or really the employees, then there may be a tax credit for providing employer contributions to the plan. It's based on the quote unquote applicable percentage. You get a tax credit for the applicable percentage of employer contributions, but it's capped at $1,000 per employee. And so the applicable percentage, it kind of steps down as you maintain the plan. It can apply for up to 5 tax years. And it's 100% in the tax year in which the plan is adopted and the first kind of subsequent plan year. And then it steps down 75, 50, 25%. So you could get a tax credit in the first year of up to 100% of the employer contribution allocated to an employee, capped at $1,000. And what an amazing benefit. I mean, so essentially, right, you're getting a tax credit for giving your employees a retirement, contribution. That full 100% or 75, 50, or 25% credit is available for employers who have less than 50 or who have 50 or fewer rather. If a company has more than 50, they still get a credit. It just phases out as they increase towards 100. So there's still a benefit. It just kind of phases out for the larger employers. But for a small, company, let's just say 5 employees, they're going to be in the kind of full benefit tier where it's 100% for the first 2 plan years, potentially the first 2 tax years, and then steps down 75, 50, 25%. So just looking at how this could work for a plan, if you were to assume that you have, an owner who's a non-employee, they want to make the maximum contributions, when you do all the testing, it turns out that, for their 5 employees, these are the contributions that they're going to make, $5,000 for employee 1, $750, $1,250, $2,000, and $1,000. So the net contributions that are going to go to the employees are $10,000, right? So, currently, they would make that contribution, and yes, it's tax deductible. So there is some tax advantage to it. I didn't put the net cost of the post-tax deduction here, but essentially you're putting in $10,000. If Secure 2.0 were to pass as it is, the employer would be able to take a tax credit, which is more valuable than the deduction for the next four years. And you can see it here. The way that these contributions worked, they would get a tax credit of, I think it's $4,750 in year 1. And so the net cost drops from $10,000 down to only $5,250. Really, and keep in mind, anything above the $5,250 is kind of the amount that the employer has to cover, and that's still deductible. So the 5250, then you get a tax deduction on top of that. So the true cost to the company is even less than $5,000. You know, the owner is getting the full $58,000 benefit, but for a much, much, much lower cost. Really making the plan very attractive. And since it phases in, it sort of eases that pain of getting into the habit of giving the employer contributions there. And you can see in the example, you know, how that credit phases out over time and how the net cost to the company kind of increases over time. So I'll pause there and ask the panel to jump in on how you see that, how you might use that to sell.
Oh, I think this will be great. This will be definitely a help because there's always so much concern as the allocation to the employees, the percentage, does it make sense cost-wise? I think this is going to be huge. And along with the tax credit, it'll definitely help to sell plans and if it passes. So I'll give my advisors heads up, but you know, this is great. I look forward to this passing. It'll help sell the plans, I think.
What to that point, Judy, Kelsey, what's the sense on timing for this? Do you have any feel for that?
Yeah, so it's certainly still being pushed. A lot of the COVID relief things are top of mind and are more, you know, higher priority. There are some certain retirement plan relief provisions kind of being tossed around and being considered as part of these initial relief packages. I see this as something that's going to be a little bit later on in the sense of there's still a bipartisan push for retirement plan to like increase retirement plan coverage. So I think that this is still possible. It's still, you know, something that the folks want. And frankly, you know, both parties have issued, you know, positive retirement plan messages. So I think it will have legs, but you probably won't see it in the first, you know, couple acts that the new Congress takes action on.
Great. Before we advance to the next point, Kelsey, Mike Gorlick, if you have any thoughts, I think you've done some white papers on a couple of these items.
We definitely had more of from Secure Act 1, had done some blogging and white papers on the tax credits for starting up plans. And, you know, I see in terms of a sales and marketing opportunity with these types of new regulations and new laws that will benefit the employers in a way where if you're doing, if you're working with your referral sources, whether they be financial advisors or CPAs, what a tremendous opportunity this brings to enable them to be bringing just a better, easier, faster solution to making a decision. I mean, if you can, we always do, all of us as TPAs do an analysis when we bring on plans to show what contributions can be made and what deductions thus can be had, and that usually sells the plans for us. But this is quite amazing, which for small plans, I mean, these are significant dollars, and it will certainly, in my opinion, help small business owners make the decision to set up these plans. Thus, the marketing effort around it should be significant. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity. We'll definitely be, if this passes, we'll be hard charging to create the right materials and bringing that to our community of advisors and CPAs so they can, again, as Judy said, I think as Dana said, working with, when you're dealing with tax credits, working with CPAs is pretty imperative, because at the end of the day, we're not the ones as TPAs, not speaking so much about the employer contribution side of things, but from any tax credit for that matter, we're not the ones taking it. We're not the ones that are offering it. We're the ones that are educating people on it, but it's happening at the tax preparation level. So it's pretty important that if you aren't marketing the CPAs, or including the CPAs in the conversations with the advisors, I think it'll be a must moving forward.
Great. So Kelsey, we're getting a lot of questions. What I'm going to ask you to do is just very quickly go through your third point. I want to try to get to a couple of the questions.
Yeah.
If we run out of time, Kelsey, These questions will register for you all and we'll send you individual responses. So I do see your questions. So let's quickly go through the Savers Credit in a minute or two, and I'd like to try to answer a few of the questions if we can.
Yeah, great. The Savers Credit is a really interesting provision. So I included what the current Savers Credit is because honestly, it so rarely comes into play. I think in our business now that most people don't know what it is. Essentially what the Savers Credit is a tax credit for the individual employee up to a certain percentage of their first $2,000 in deferrals to a retirement plan. And the percentage of the tax credit is somewhere between 10 and 50% of that first $2,000. And you can see the income limits here. Essentially though, if you have any employee who's over $19,500 as a single person or only $40,000 as a joint filer, the tax credit is very, very low, right? It drops from 50% to 20% at that level and completely phases out for folks who have a single income over 32,000 and for married folks who have joint incomes over 65,000. So it's a pretty low income threshold. I mean, dropping from 50 to 20 very, very rapidly. And then really even from 20 to 0, not pretty rapidly after that too. So it doesn't become a huge driver of participation and savings because it doesn't apply to a lot of people, particularly not at perhaps meaningful levels. So Secure 2.0 would modify and what they call modernize the Savers Credit. It would change that whole tier thing where it goes 50, 20, 10, 0 to a single look. It's 50% of the contribution. It phases out over the income, $20,000, and then it goes to a 0. So you don't kind of drop so dramatically as your income increases, it just phases out. It also increases the income limit very significantly, right? So before it dropped out of the 50% range at $19,500, now it would drop out at $40,000. So a single person who makes less than $40,000 will get a 50% tax credit on their first, instead of $2,000, it's on their first $3,000 of deferrals. So essentially, right, they're paying people to save. And the people that it applies to are at much higher thresholds. And you can see here what the income limits are: 40,000 for singles, 80,000 for married, and then it phases out $20,000 higher. So, people making less than $60,000 are getting some form of tax credit. It's a pretty significant increase. And just quickly, here's what an example would look like. For someone who is married making $50,000, defers $3,000, currently they're going to get nothing in a tax credit. Going forward, half of their deferrals would be returned to basically returned to their income in the form of a tax credit. They would get a $1,500 tax credit. So it's a big incentive for individuals to save.
Great. Comments from the panel on this particular point of 2.0, thoughts?
I think it'll be a great tool for the financial advisors, not to play devil's advocate, but this is a lot of giving and I don't see much taking. So I just wonder what concessions will have to be made in the end to accomplish these types of credits.
Yes.
Yeah, we just haven't seen a lot of this as TPAs. Our businesses that are our clients are, they're I guess the average salaries are a little higher here in Southern California, and not as many manufacturers that we've had as clients over the years. So I just don't see this as much. So for me, for a Southern California business, it may not be as impactful, but certainly more impactful with these limits.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I don't know whether this would happen, it sort of struck me as a way to get deferrals up for plans that can't be safe harbor, to really educate and promote that, so that if for some reason the plan is not safe harbor, where you need to worry about what your deferral percentages are, this can be a great way to help promote those plans, and maybe even sell plans to folks who can't afford to be safe harbor. It increases the contribution that the owners could get because their employees are paid to save.
Terrific. So Kelsey, we have about 60 seconds remaining.
Okay.
Rob Reed, we're going to email you individually. Let me just see if we can get one question in. Andy Wass is on the line from Nicholas Pensions. He'd like to know, he said his understanding is that the existence of a SEP or simple for 3 years disqualifies an employer from taking advantage of the tax credit you mentioned. And he wants to know, to your knowledge, is there any discussion of removing that in Secure Act 2.0?
Andy, I don't think that there is a revision to that provision in Secure 2.0. I would need to double check, but I don't think so. Really, it was focused on modifying just the amount of the credit and not the other ways in which it was operating.
Okay, and we'll see if we can get this one in, Kelsey.
Okay.
Another attendee says to confirm in terms of number of years, 0 and 1 mean question mark.
Right. So back on I think it was the employer contribution example, I used year 0 to mean the tax year in which the plan is adopted. And then year 1 as the first tax year of the employer after the plan was adopted. So year 0, it could be a partial year, it could be a full year, but it is the tax year in which it is adopted. That's year 0, and then year 1 would be the first year after the year in which it's adopted.
Fantastic. Well, we can spend a whole hour with you, Kelsey, and we're going to have you back to join us again. For the folks in the audience, I will be sending you a full copy of Kelsey's deck, along with her contact information, our contact information. Kelsey, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to having you again, hopefully next month. Mike, Judy, and Dana, thanks for your participation, and looking forward to the rest of our presentations today.
Thanks, everyone.
So we're going to go ahead and move on. We are going to move to our second panel, if you will, and we're going to bring on Peter Welsh from Millennium Trust to talk about a very exciting new offering that they are literally rolling out with you all today. It's their emergency savings program, Peter. I had the chance along with Dina Hamad. Dina, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dawn.
We got an advanced presentation the other day, and I asked Dina, who is the president of Retirement Plan Solutions, to join us because, Peter, when you get done, we want to talk about TPA applications, but I think your offering is very exciting, and I'm going to take control of the slides because we're having a little AV issue with Zoom, but you just give me the cue and I will advance them for you.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll jump right into it. Looking at that picture that you posted of me with the tie, I'm starting to wonder if I could even tie a tie right now. I think I want to have worn one. Well, welcome everybody again. Thanks for being here. The topic of emergency savings is as old as time, I suppose, in many respects. It's taken on a new level of importance with the pandemic and with some other things. Maybe you can go to slide 3 if you would, Dawn.
Absolutely.
There you go. Lots of these stats, and I'm obviously dealing with a very well-informed and knowledgeable group of webinar participants here, so I won't go through all the stats, but many of these you've seen before in terms of the inability of folks to kind of self-fund a $400 emergency or paycheck to paycheck. So if you kind of take that as kind of a starting point for the issue at hand, and then weave that into the relatively ubiquitous term of financial wellness in today's world, and the stress that the employee feels. As we say, they don't leave their problems in the parking lot if they do go to work anymore in a car. They bring those financial challenges to work, which has impact to the employer. It basically then triggered our response here. So the emerging workplace benefit, right? So how can we develop a solution to help employees do, or the American worker do, what they intuitively, and we all know, they should be doing, which is set aside what they call a rainy day fund or something else along that size. There's nothing magical about this in some respects, right? Many of us on the phone, I'm sure, actually have some money set aside for emergencies, but the statistics tell us the vast majority of American workers don't. So how do we do this? Well, we could educate them, tell them they need to do it. some modicum of success possibly. But the workplace is where Millennium Trust feels we have the greatest opportunity to move the needle here. So really maybe basically enabling employees to conveniently and systematically put away money for their emergency accounts. All right, next slide, please. So here's how we basically approached it. We needed to make it a turnkey solution, and you'll see more about this. And there's a lot of detail in these slides, I probably should say, that we're going to send out to you. So you can take notes if you want, but don't worry, there's going to be some flow charts and other things in here because I knew my audience. So I want to make sure you have what you need to fully understand this, but a lot of detail here. But so the turnkey solution is basically bringing our custodial services. Again, it's where I started. We're the largest auto rollover solution in the country. Some of that has some trickle-down effects we'll get to in a moment in terms of being able to support an offering like this. But bringing those services together, we're very good with money in, money out, large volumes, et cetera. So basically extend those core capabilities of Millennium Trust into the workplace and make this a workplace benefit in many respects. You'll see how we do that. And enable our strategic partners to implement it relatively quickly because having been on the corporate side for as long as I have, I know the challenges of asking anybody for IT resources to get this done. So we needed to make this as turnkey as possible. This right here is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the co-branded turnkey solution here. This just gives you some idea of the various roles and how we might work together if you have an interest in maybe offering this to your clients. I should say at this point, we work with over 30 of the top 50 record keepers for their auto rollover solutions. And we are in conversations with 3 of the top 10 right now to roll this out with them. And we'll probably have an announcement on 1 within the next few weeks and the other 2 forthcoming. So as you see that, you might say, well, what the heck was this presentation all about? He's connecting to record keepers. We are, and indeed those record keepers, which I'm sure most of you work with, you could take advantage of the solution through them. Or recognizing that your book of business might be varied, right? You may have many record keepers with whom you work and would like to differentiate yourself in your local marketplace with an offering like this. It can be offered through you on a standalone. So you might see this offering in a couple different ways, right? As we move forward through 2021 with some record keepers or directly through yourselves. Okay, maybe next page there gives you kind of an idea of some of the things we're putting together. So it can be co-branded for the TPA. Obviously, it's a outside the plan taxable. Where there is no tax benefit right now in any code section of which I'm aware to set this up. So this would be after tax to the employee, but it is payroll deduct. That's the key here. So that has familiarity with employers and employees. Everyone at the worksite is familiar with payroll deduct. So this is just another slot on the payroll file that we need to make note of, after-tax dollars, of course. Then we basically have an employer and employee onboarding. We'll get to in a minute as to why we think that's a critical differentiator for us versus some other folks that might be launching their emergency savings solutions this year. And then certainly the service portal. So the last thing you need is a whole bunch of employees calling you about emergency savings. So we have online, everything about this is digital. There is no paper involved. Employees go out to our portals, sign up, employers remit their contributions, not on paper, through our portal. Employees claim distributions as they need them through either the portal or through our contact center. So there is no paper flowing through anybody's hands on this one. All right, next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about that, how they come in one time monthly. You know, the reality is a lot of the solution, as we tried to go to market, there is very little benchmarking that we have for this. Nobody's launched it yet. So there are a few coming up to market in this quarter, but this is a relatively new offering. And so how we get money in and out, we are thinking about a debit card at some point, and we could possibly do that. But right now, it's really just the ACH contributions. Okay, next slide, please. So the employer onboarding and support services. So we've got a dedicated team in our contact center to help employers understand how to do this, answer all their questions. We've got an onboarding guide that you'll see there We can co-brand that with you as well. But basically, we've thought it through so that it's kind of add water and stir on this. So we didn't want it to be too complicated for the employers. We recognize this is, in their minds, possibly another administrative task, right? We don't want it to be that to them, or another thing they've got to worry about. So it's a relatively very simple A to B to A to C, that type of thing, on how to get started. But they have a team of folks. We're headquartered out of Oak Brook, Illinois. I probably should have said that. We have our contact center there that's ready and able to help employers on board. Okay, next slide, please. So the service portal, this is where they would basically go in and enter the employee by employee deferrals. You'll notice down there at the bottom, there's a match opportunity. So the way we've designed this, again, to make it comfortable and familiar for the employers, lots of different ways. The employer can just let employees defer. I mean, that's obvious. Or they can incent, and that can be a couple of different ways. Much like a 401k match, we can work with them to have 25 cents on the dollar up to a dollar amount, whatever you want to do. So because we're in the non-qualified world, after tax world, virtually anything is available to them, and we can support virtually anything they want to do. So if they want to incent that, that's possible. And also, much like HSAs, if they want to put a beginning of the year contribution lump sum in for employees, they can do that to further incent the employees to have an emergency savings. So both of those concepts are very familiar with most employers, maybe not micro employers with the HSAs, but with most employers, the high deductible health plans have been around for a while. They understand that concept, and they understand obviously matching inside of a retirement plan. So either way they want to go, but like I said, those are optional. They don't necessarily have to do that. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the digital account piece. So part of the process that we go through when you open up digital accounts, that's your know your customer piece, right? We have to have certain protocols in place as a financial institution. We take care of all that, digital signatures, contact centers. Next slide, please. I want to get to, yeah, let's pause here, then we'll go to the next one. But this is right here is, I wanted to emphasize this for just a moment. So our contact center in Oak Brook, because we have, as we sit today, just shy of 2 million auto rollover accounts on our book. So this is the 5,000 under cash out, if you will, representing about 6 billion in assets. So, and we did, last year we did 625,000, if you will, brand new auto rollovers. A lot of those folks claim, so they don't stay on the books, but we're used to money's coming in, people claiming their accounts, money's going out. So we handle over 40,000 on average, 40,000 calls a month in that contact center. So I know I've talked to a couple other record keepers around, and like I say, we're not the only ones on the street talking about these type of solutions. And several of our competitors right now are startups, and that's fine. That's healthy competition. But what they have right now is basically an idea and an app. And I'm not sure they've really thought through what happens when they start selling these, because I've been around long enough to know that when you sell, you're going to have some calls, and having the ability to handle 40,000 and scale up from there on a monthly basis calls is a real differentiator, I think, from us. Okay, next slide, please. This is where we'll spend a little bit of time. So how does it work? So the company needs to adopt the program. They just signed an agreement with us. We then onboard them. They can access the Millennium Trust portal, if you will, and then they start remitting money. That's their work stream, if you will. From an employee standpoint, we don't have auto enroll. That's a question that's come up. There are some issues around that, fair trade issues, as well as consumer protection bureaus. And actually at the state level, you've got state garnishment issues. So right now it is an opt-in solution. We'll see what maybe Secure 3.0 will have for us. Who knows? I'm just hypothecating here, but as these things start to gain traction, I think they'll start to gain legislative interest. But as we sit today, this is a pure after-tax opt-in situation. So we would, at the employee level, send an email out to employees under the employer's moniker, if you will, inviting them to enroll in the program, along with some materials as to why. And then the employee completes the agreement, they access the portal, and then they're into managing their account. And then on the contribution side, the employer accesses on a payroll by payroll basis, just downloads the contribution files. We ACH the money and we allocate it to the accounts, very much like a 401k program. So those are the various work streams I wanted to cover. Next slide here. So this is just kind of a summary service that we'll, as I said, we'll send out to you. Actually, might modify this a little bit. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Yeah. So just on Millennium Trust a little bit. Like I said, the name Millennium, just FYI, we were formed in the year 2000. So with this, we're actually celebrating our 20th year. Just finished celebrating our 20th year last year in business. I don't want to say owned because there's a lot of very worthy competitors out there in the auto rollover space, but we do, like I say, have about a 75% market share. We're used to high volumes. We're used to lower account balances. We're used to dealing with individuals by the millions. So we think this is, for us, a natural outgrowth of some core competencies and, probably most importantly, really meeting a need that the average American worker has. And we also recognize it's not for everybody. It will be for the masses, but we're not trying to get everybody on board here because we recognize many people have their own solution here. So I think, Dawn, with that, I think I was right at 15 minutes, which was the goal, right? So
fantastic, Peter. Great presentation and what a timely offering. Dina, I'm going to bring you into the conversation as a TPA owner and a TPA that likes to try new things from a marketing perspective. Your thoughts on applications as a TPA owner with advisors and potentially even plan sponsors?
Yes, Dawn. When Peter showed this to us the other day, I loved it, guys, because it can differentiate our operations from other TPA operations. And it's helping the participants. It's helping the plan sponsors help the participants. And Peter didn't talk about this, but how much could we charge? I know that's what everybody's thinking. How much could we charge to do this? And it's going to be a small amount per participant. From what I think we could charge, $2 to $3 per participant. But if you look at the number of participants that you have, I've thought about this, Dawn and Peter, since we talked earlier this week about how we can wrap this around some other services that we already offer. Mm-hmm. And we at RPSI transmit contributions, the payroll contributions for a lot of our plan sponsors. I know some of those go electronically, but we charge to submit those contributions. So if we sell the ESAs to these plan sponsors and tell them they don't have to worry about transmitting those contributions to Millennium, we will do that for them. And by the way, we can take off those transmissions that you're having to send to the record keeper on the payroll side. Then that's an additional charge that you can charge those clients for. I don't know how many of you are doing that already, but for those that aren't, that's a nice revenue stream for us. And we can expand upon that, Peter and Dawn, with the ESA, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Our fee, our standard fee is $3 a month. It's really difficult to figure out how to scale this at anything more than that. And we're not making tons, as you might imagine. So $3 a month per employee who signs up. And we're fully expecting the employer to pay that as part of the positioning of the product as a workplace benefit. But yeah, but to Dina's point, to that, you could add anything, whatever you think the market might bear, whatever your services justify.
Right. And again, I'm thinking $2 to $3 on our end, guys, would be about all we could add. But if you multiply that times the number of participants that you hope would participate in these ESAs, I think it could be a good revenue stream for us.
Absolutely. That's terrific. And, we also do a lot of advisor webinars. We talked about this, Peter and Dina, and obviously in the midst of the pandemic, a lot of employers perhaps don't want to talk about anything with their retirement plan, but this really is something new for the advisor to take to the employer and start a conversation. And for the ability for TPAs to leverage this across platforms and with their advisors as a potential differentiator, I think is very timely also. And I know, Peter, you've worked with a lot of advisors, obviously, in your career. What's your initial feedback from advisors on this?
Well, advisors are always looking for something different, right? Something that separates them apart, something that makes the client more sticky, if you will, so that they're not being defending 2 or 3 basis points of investment fees, right? So they're very interested in this. And I can tell you one thing I didn't say, there was a period of time where I served before I came to Millennium Trust, about 2 years as a financial advisor, working with individual clients as well as retirement plan clients. And the advisor community, one of the first things that we start with is really the establishment of a emergency savings account. It's really hard to do long-term financial planning with folks when anything you do could be totally disrupted by the next emergency that you haven't thought about, right? So it's kind of 101 financial planning to make sure you have this. I'm not going to say it's more important than anything else. That's ridiculous, but it is part of an overall financial planning profile. So most of the advisors that I've talked to about this are extremely excited because they haven't seen anything like this at the workplace yet that could actually help solve that financial planning continuum.
It's awesome. So it's great for wealth management advisors, retirement advisors alike.
Yes.
So I think it's a great opportunity. We are going to send you Peter and David's contact information. We're going to send you the full deck. And for those TPAs on the phone that are interested in implementing this on a standalone basis, Millennium is ready to go. And I think it's exciting, the opportunity to co-brand some marketing materials, and as Dina articulated, generate some additional revenues and talk about something different that perhaps others are not with advisors. So anyone that's interested, we're going to get the information in your hands. Let me know, I'll connect you with them, or we will get you connected with Peter and David and their team to get you started on this. So great way to start the new year, Peter. And we're going to have you stay on for our next panel of sales leaders. And Dina, we invite you to stay as well. Thank you. We'll go ahead and go on and bring on our next panel. And we have with us 3 TPA leaders, Russ Hooker, who many of you know from Nova 401k Associates. Hello, Russ.
Hey, Don.
We have Mike Zaharitis. Mike works with us, and love Mike, but I told him, just like Yanni, I very rarely get his last name correct. So Mike, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And Mickey Murphy from Blue Benefits Consulting. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So David Turner, we have you on as well. David is our dedicated relationship manager here at TPA Benchmark for TPA owners. And many of you know David. David's going to help me facilitate this round robin session. And the goal of this is we wanted to put before you 3 TPAs from different parts of the country. Mike is down in Atlanta. Mickey is out in Indiana. Russ is a national TPA. Different sizes, different sales approaches. And we wanted to talk about some top initiatives that they're putting into place beginning of 2021 to jumpstart their sales. So David's going to run the first question, but let me start. Russ, we'll start with you since you're first on the picture here. Maybe each of you could take a moment or two and just tell us a little bit about your practice, and then we'll jump into some questions. And we thank you for joining our group today.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel with everybody. It was interesting in our pre-call just because we are different size firms, different locations, doing different things. I've known Mike probably close to for 20 years. It's Zaharides.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ.
Russ.
Yeah, so you guys know I focus while my business partner is an actuary and an attorney. I oftentimes joke that I'm the she's the brains of the operation and I'm the good-looking one. So I focus exclusively on sales. So this is just my passion. I do currently have 15 sales guys around the country, and so these are things that I'm always thinking about. And frankly, just in our pre-conversation with Mike and Mickey, even though I do it exclusively, I still learn from sitting around talking with other leaders of firms about what they're thinking about, because I'm just trying to, do anything we can to continue to grow. And obviously in this past year has been challenging for us all. So hopefully we can give people some ideas that'll help them as hopefully we're coming out of this.
Wonderful. Great. I love the optimism, Russ. Thank you. Mickey, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Our practice is probably on the opposite end of yours, Russ. We have a dozen employees, not a dozen salespeople. I head up the practice and I'm responsible for sales as well as running the practice. So I have to work to isolate time to work on marketing and sales objectives, and I handle both, which aren't necessarily the same thing. So a little bit different perspective.
That's exactly what we want, Mickey. Mike, thanks for your patience with me. You go on and go ahead.
Yeah, I'm probably somewhere in the middle of the two. So I have about 1,200 clients. We cover the Southeast. I was primarily the salesperson, but we have offices in Savannah and Augusta now. We can cover the Southeast. And so we've got about 3 people that are focused on sales. And, now that I'm running the practice myself, so it's a lot more to focus on the practice and do sales. So I'm trying to expand that a little bit.
Wonderful. And my counterpart, David Turner, I'm going to have you start the questions for our panel.
Hey, thanks, Don. So as we go charging into the brave new year, 2021, what are the top 1 or 2 marketing or sales priorities that are getting your immediate attention? And Russ, I'll come to you first.
Well, I mean, in the beginning of the year, it's about goal setting and, working with the wholesalers. You got to understand who your partners are, who you want to work with. Maybe you can't work with everybody. I know we can't, even though it's a pretty large operation. We don't get there by working with everybody. So we know who our partners are or who we want to connect with. And so really in the beginning of the year, it's about sitting down with your wholesalers and their internals and really trying to come up with goal setting, understanding what their goals are, and what that breaks down if they also sell a bundled product versus unbundled, and just understanding where your firm is going to fit into that. And then frankly, sharing your goals with them, trying to getting everyone aligned. And what you'll find, I think, is if you get your wholesalers engaged in your goals and you can get engaged in theirs, you have a roadmap to go somewhere. And I oftentimes, I heard this quote one time, Yogi Berra once famously said, if you don't know where you're going, you might not get there. And so you really want to have a plan to where you're trying to get to this year, and sitting down with your wholesalers and their internals. Don't forget their internals, because the internals a lot of times have their own goals around driving business or maybe selling a certain piece of business, specifically startups. And then letting them know, hey, listen, I'm here ready, willing, and able to help out in helping you achieve your goals, and I'd love to have your help in achieving mine. So I think that's early in the year what we tend to focus on.
How about you, Mickey?
Well, as being in a smaller environment, my focus has been to actually carve out time to do not only that marketing piece, but to decide what it is. What are we trying to do? Because so many times we're just responding to our channels that are coming in. How do we want that to look in a proactive way? So I do have access to a marketing team that I'm working with, just scheduling time to sit down and look at a calendar. What do we want to do to set out regular communications to advisors as well as our clients? What is that going to look like, and what do we want to convey to them? Coming up with some target clients that we want to meet, those types of things, just actually setting those goals for us to have somewhere to go rather than to not get there, right, Russ? So for coming from an environment where we're not doing sales all the time or marketing all the time, it's actually carving that out, scheduling it, and making sure that we are communicating and doing those things as part of continuing to let our practice grow.
Awesome. And Mike?
Yeah, so we start off the year with a kind of a sales plan every year, and then by October, November, December, maybe it's off the rails. So we take a look back and see what worked, where did we get our business from, what broker dealers, what advisory groups, What products did we work with mostly? And then we look forward and say, okay, well, do we need to tweak it this year? Do we need to change it around? What can we do to enhance that going forward? Maybe we got more business from, say, Edward Jones than we did the prior year. So maybe we need to spend a little more time in there, or, Raymond James. So just depending on where we were and where our traction was, do we need to follow up and double down on that? Or do we need to look at other areas where maybe we didn't get as much, and, whether it's a vendor or a wire or a broker dealer, and maybe we need to focus on those and work that for this year. And definitely in January, February, March, we put our plan together and hit our plan pretty hard, and hope it's sticking by October, November, December.
And that, David, is really a perfect segue point to talking about channels that you all are focusing on in 2021. And Russ, maybe you could talk about the multifaceted kind of channel approach that you're taking, not just with traditional providers, but some folks even like Millennium Trust, and share what channels you're focusing on and how you're going to develop them in the new year.
Yeah, I think, as TPAs, we kind of get into, you get into sort of something like tunnel vision, where you're like, hey, listen, this always worked for me. I'm going to continue to do this, maybe just dripping on the CPAs or, a specific broker dealer. Some of what Mike said is dead on. It's analyzing, where did I have success, or where did I want to have more success? And then thinking outside the box, I know a lot of us will focus on CPA firms. Some TPAs are part of a CPA firm, but some of the things that Kelsey was talking about today, those things have been overlooked because CARES usurped everything that the original Secure Act brought to the table. So the CPA channel, working with the DCIO channel, working, David Turner, obviously he's based down here in Texas as well. We've done many events where they're part of that program. The stuff that Peter was just talking about, it's about bringing people new ideas, talking about things that not everybody is talking about. So thinking about maybe even, outside the DCIO, but the retail wholesalers on the investment side. So it's really just trying to not come at them the way that they expect the TPA to come at them, which is with a bunch of acronyms and code sections, but come to them with different pieces of information. The DCIO guys have a lot of interesting things. The stuff that Peter just talked about, it's interesting. It's not going to be applicable to everybody, but man, they're going to walk away with a new idea, and you as a TPA brought that to them. Lets them know that you're plugged into the industry and looking for different things. So no matter what, they're going to call, Mickey, Mike, myself, even if it's on something else, even if they didn't like my idea, what they liked is the fact that we have ideas. And so I think that's what you got to be open to as a TPA.
Speaking of ideas, Russ, on the topic, someone is asking from our audience, is anyone looking to sponsor a PEP? How does that fit in with your plans or not?
Well, what I'm seeing is TPAs draw a line in the sand. And I was talking to one of my wholesalers here locally in Houston last week, and he asked me that same question, Dawn. We're gonna be in the PEP space. We've registered as a PPP under two different names. We're expecting our trust company paperwork to come through any day now. We're going to be in that business. But what I see some TPAs doing is drawing a line and saying, hey, we're not going to do it. We're going to sell against it. I think you have to have a position, take a position and defend it. I don't think you can, I don't know that it's, when people say they're going to sell against it, I think what they're saying is, hey, listen, I don't see the value or the value my firm brings doesn't align with that. And I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. I've been on one other panel where I spoke about this. Sometimes, even though we're going to get into it at some level for, a smaller TPA firm whose main value is that consulting component. Well, I mean, the PEP is all about somebody who doesn't want to be engaged, doesn't want to be responsible, doesn't want to design a plan. And the TPA's DNA is about working with plan sponsors who appreciate that and want to be engaged, or that, they want to be engaged once we've gotten them engaged. And so there is a certain amount of maybe a lack of consistency with, what a PEP wants to do versus what a TPA has historically done. That being said, you're going to want to be educated on it. You want to talk about it. And if you aren't going to be in it, I'm not saying sell against it. I'm saying, talk about what the value is that you bring, or what you think the value is for those small employers not to join it. If you're going to be into it, Well, there's going to be you're going to have to be careful because a lot of these wholesalers, that's all they want to talk about. And you don't want to get sucked into some vortex on, just chasing down PEP after PEP and winning nothing. So you've got to really sit down and think about what is your strategy and then pursue it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong strategy on it, but you're going to have to be educated either way.
It's great.
I would agree with that. I think particularly on the more custom boutique type TPA shops, it will be just like anything else. Am I going to do cafeteria documents? Probably not, because that's not something that we're focused on. Am I going to take a certain type of client because we got the opportunity to do it? I might say no, because that doesn't fall into our category of where we specialize. So we're not looking at PEPs at the moment because we do consider ourselves a boutique TPA. You got brokerage accounts, bring them. We know how to do that. Whereas other people would say, no way, it's on a platform, it doesn't fit in our category. But I charge for those services too. So I'm going to take a look at whether or not I can make anything on a PEP. Probably not, because the economies of scale aren't there unless you're doing it in a way that you can see where the funds are coming in. So unless I've got a ready market for them and can partner with somebody where I know that channel's coming in, it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not necessarily marketing against them. I'm just saying that I'm not going to bring that to the table for my group right now because I can't see where it brings value to me, because we're not doing this for fun. We're doing it for a paycheck, right? So if it doesn't make sense to me monetarily, I'm not looking at it. And I don't see how that's going to make sense to our group.
Well, our audience is loving your responses. Mike, your thoughts, and then a little bit on channels that you're focused on for 2021.
Yeah, I'm feel like the middle child here. I'm like right in the middle between Russ and Mickey. I mean, yeah, I want to do it. No, I don't want to do it, and I'm evaluating it, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. You've heard both sides, so I'm right in the middle, and I'm probably middle size, and so I maybe will create a market, maybe not, but to be determined. From my standpoint.
Great. And Mike, I know you brought a salesperson on this year. Talk a little bit about what you're doing with broker dealers and some of the channels that you're focused on, and how you're leveraging that additional resource to ramp up your sales efforts this year.
Yeah, so I got a younger sales guy who started with me, good guy and working hard. But the reason I did it is because we have more territory to cover, but also I'm getting a little older, I'm a little more grayer, and I'm seeing more and more advisors out there that are a little bit younger, and they're walking into meetings with me, and they're it's like bringing their dad in, which is okay, but from a standpoint of I want to bring some younger people in, grow the business. I want more younger people to help learn the industry. I think that's what the industry as a whole needs. From a sales standpoint, there are definitely connections that he's making with people more his age and his style, as opposed to the gray hair guy walking in the door. Not that that's always a bad thing, but what I'm having him focus on, because he's newer, so doing a lot of in-house training, learning about what we do, branching out. He's working on plans that are smaller, startup plans, solo cash balance plans, really the smaller end, working with advisors that are newer to the business themselves. There are certain advisory groups that tend to have a larger breadth of newer advisors. So, without naming names, you can probably guess who they are. That's who I'm having him focus on, those broker dealers and advisory groups that have younger advisors, where he can make a connection, where he knows more than they do, maybe not a lot more, but to some degree, and can pass the test on that and help guide them and learn it together.
Terrific. And David, I think you got another question for the panel.
Yeah, absolutely. So given the current business environment we're in, driven primarily by the impact of the pandemic, what changes in your strategy, or give us your thoughts around how you're approaching communicating with advisors as well as your other referral sources? And let's go reverse order. We'll start with Mike this time.
Yeah, so we're we do some email blasts still. We're still doing that. I'm doing some face-to-face meetings, a lot of calls, a lot of Zoom meetings. I'm finding here in Georgia and the Southeast, we're a little more open. than other parts of the country. So people are not as adverse to the meeting, and so when appropriate, we do that. But it's always safe, masks and safe distance. So we're definitely doing that. But yeah, it's probably more of an email kind of campaign blast that we do to stay top of mind with our advisor group.
Yeah, Mickey, how about you in this Zoom environment we're in?
I have become Zoom queen, and I have not seen a client face to face since March, quite honestly. I have an 81-year-old mother who's getting married to the love of her life in a few weeks. So I have just kept myself to myself pretty much, so we make sure nobody gets exposed. But otherwise, we have really done a lot of Zoom meetings. I have, we've talked this a little bit before. I'm one of those people who says, hey, let's do Zoom instead of a phone call if I haven't met you before, because I really love having the opportunity to see face to face. But we've continued to go out and talk to people that way virtually. I'm talking to advisors still, just getting to know them, what they're doing. I do a lot of work with the individual advisors like Edward Jones, just in mentoring and bringing them along, and offer to teach them the ropes. So we know what their incentives are with Edward Jones, and just let them know that we're available. I'm also working on our website, trying to create some landing pages for proposals where we haven't had that in just because in our size category, that's not been something that was a prominent thing before. So just doing some things to reconfigure our website, doing some video presentations on topics and things like that, just becoming more active in the social media, just to make sure that people know who we are and that we're still out here, and that we're experts in our field, and that they should know who Blue Benefits is.
Awesome. Russ.
David, man, I didn't know you were going to ask a question exactly like that, but I actually just got, like, my blood pressure went up, man, because, I jotted down just some things that we were doing. And frankly, the pandemic stuff, for me, it was an opportunity to either use it as an excuse or use it as an opportunity. It was a challenge. It was exciting. It helped me think. It reinvigorated me in a lot of ways to think about the business again anew, because you don't want to get into a rut about what you do. RDB plans earlier in the year, I'm talking about from March to September, than we'd ever closed before. Why? A lot of these doctors' offices that we cater to, they're closed down. But I'm just going to tell you, man, people are still going to get sick. They're still going to get, they still got to go to the dentist. All those things didn't stop because of COVID. And so you've often heard this as a mantra. When we talk to even ourselves as business owners, as TPAs, we talk about the need to work on the business, not in the business. Well, guess what COVID did? It gave a lot of business owners the opportunity to work on their business, not in their business. And when we put that idea inside of advisors' minds, saying, hey man, reach out to that doctor. He or she's still gonna make a bunch of money as soon as their office opens back up or whatever. Now's the time that they can actually look at it. And believe it or not, we had a lot of plans that we had pitched in the past where you're like, well, I don't have time. Guess what they had now? They had time to really look at it. None of these guys thought they're going out of business. And frankly, with every crisis creates opportunity, and there's a bunch of people making a bunch of money in this time. And you really missed an opportunity if you didn't get out, if you didn't get up every day and go to work every day and go do it every day. And that's what we did. I hope I didn't offend anybody on that, but it's really we felt challenged, and we felt the need to challenge other people.
Well, I think that's awesome. And I, for one, am full of positive energy here. Thank you so much for your comments. I wish we could go longer, but basically we are at the 12:15 mark. I want to thank our panel. I want to thank Russ, David, Mike, Mickey. I want to thank Peter Welsh for presenting and participating in our event. I want to thank our first two panels. And everyone on the call, thank you for joining us. We will be doing this again around the same time next month. I'll send you an invite. You will receive from us a follow-up deck from Kelsey, a follow-up deck from Peter, and contact information. And we will be reporting your names to ASPA only for good purposes. We're going to have your 1.5 CE credits uploaded within 2 weeks. So ASPA, thank you for your support. Thanks for joining us today, and go get them, guys. Have a great first quarter.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.